if there's anything that's not perfect in the world, we've created it. And God is trying to help us. All right, so let's start with the book. So this is what Emmanuel says in the book here, which is not translated. I'm sorry, all the translations are completely my own disarray in trying to understand English, but I'm sure you guys will understand if I make a lot of mistakes. So Brazil, this is Emmanuel. So Brazil is not only destined to meet the material needs of the world's poorest, but also to provide the entire world the comforting expression of the rationalized faith. So we're going to stop there. So what Emmanuel is telling us, this is a lot. This is a very strong sentence. So Brazil will meet the material needs of the world's poorest. So it will supply material support, like food, any elements to survival of us incarnated, but also the entire world with the expression of rationalized faith. And to be the largest provider of spiritual energies of the world. The largest provider of spiritual energies of the world. Wow.
That's a responsibility.
Wow. I'm pretty sure Emmanuel is right. I don't think Emmanuel is wrong. It's a very broad sentence. Very deep concept. And I'm pretty sure we're not doing the job. And that's why I'm telling you God is perfect, because we can start to create reasons why we're not doing this, right? And that we do that all the time. But Emmanuel is telling, this is what Brazil is destined to do. Destined. Look at the word he's using it. Because he's not saying, Brazil is doing it right now, or you guys have to do it now. It's saying that you guys have to work hard for this to happen, because there were numerous meetings before in the spirituality that were decided, and we've organized all the system in the universe to work towards this goal. And now here's the interesting part. And he describes meetings, right? So he describes as Jesus coming closer to the surface of earth, not incarnating, because we know he incarnated only once here. But he came for this meeting of pure spirits. These are the governors of many planets, constellations in the universe. And Jesus being the governor of our constellation. So he comes, imagine this. We're working for, let's say here, say company. So Joe works for PwC. Okay, so here you go. And I'm a field worker. I'm selling something for PwC, for example. And the world, whoever owns the company comes to Toronto and he wants to talk to me. And I go into his office. So he has a plan that I can't understand. I'm just running around and selling things. But he has in his mind the vision of everything planned out for everything that's going to happen. So I'm trembling. I go into his office. I don't know what to do. I have no idea what's going to happen. And I'm so afraid. But then Jesus, as the governor and perfection that takes care of all of us, instead of demanding, instead of saying, you guys, I can't believe you guys are doing this. No. He's going to say, and the spirits that are responsible for Brazil, for example, and he's gonna tell Ismael to take care of it. And there, you see, these are spirits that we don't even understand. We have not even a conception of how elevated they are. Well, we don't, because we think elevated for us, it's like not solar. That's like the maximum of spiritual elevation. Not solar is as close to Earth as anything in the universe. No. It's just like a half of a step above where we are right now. Not solar. And we think it's like... So these spirits, no, they don't live in our solar. They don't even live in our planet. They don't even live probably in our constellation. They're like in the sun or even beyond that. We don't know. We can't even imagine how they would appear. Okay, so they come to us. And what they say is that don't worry about your concerns. Because what the spirits that were brought together from earth to talk to them, all they had to say is like, I have no idea when I'm going to do this. Right? The world's like falling apart. I don't know what to do. Okay? There's war. There's like corruption. There's like people dying. There's like natural disasters. Like no one cares about anything. And you're telling me that Brazil has to be the largest provider of spiritual world in the universe, like in the world. I don't know how to do it. And then Jesus was going to say, was this, Jesus being perfect, going to tell us, there's only one thing you have to do. You have to work hard. You got to love. And you got to act with love. So you have to do charity. And you got to implement that all following that basic principle. Use love. Listen to what I've told you. And no, he didn't say that. But he's pretty much saying that. Like I told you this before. Like I came here, everything's like read. That's what he's saying in a very gentle, nice way. And Ismael, you'll be the one leading this process. And you have to, whatever you have to do, you're going to bring the spirits that are going to be incarnated into this place. There's going to be changes in every single level that you can imagine, from higher above all the way down to earth, that will work together to make this work. We're destined to do this. This is the plan of God for Brazil. Now, if you think about the universe, and if you think about Brazil, so this is like a little trickle of things that are going to be happening in the universe at one single point in time. And still, see, there's like this meeting with Jesus and all the spirits just to take care of this little aspect of the big plan. And we're fortunate enough that Humberto de Campos tells us this. It's like, hey, this is what happened. And this is why you guys have to work hard now. Because, we are now, not only, we kind of have a feeling about this, but we know exactly what happened. And Emmanuel comes and say, here it is. Do your job. And why Brazil? Why Brazil? Is it for chance? Because it's a nice warm place? No? Canada's too cold. No, of course not. It's because if we go back now to On the Way to the Light, which is, by the way, the reading we had, here it is. Okay. Here it is. On the Way to the Light, Chico Xavier and Emmanuel. If you go to this book, which I think I talked about this before here, but it brings us the development, the spiritual and physical evolution of the planet throughout history, the incarnations, and why different countries are formed, the societies, Egyptians, and, he talks about everything, And one thing they talk about here is that how each one of the groups that incarnated from Capella, which is another planet, and I don't think I have time to go through all the details, but pretty much, when Capella went to step in evolution, when they went into their stage of regeneration, a lot of spirits could not incarnate over there anymore because energetically speaking, they could not cope with this new vibratory range of peace and perfection that would live in that planet. Similar to what's happening to us right now. So, they could not stay there. They were invited to come to earth. And God is perfect. They're not punished. What they're doing now, they were helping us because we were far behind. And they came and said, we're going to work together. And they brought to us a lot. They brought to us so many new concepts, the concept of one God, Hebrews. They brought us the concept of a spiritual life, Egyptians, the incarnation in India. So those are all concepts brought from the spirits that were seeding to us the primary concepts of God and the universe and our spiritual existence. But now when Humberto de Campos goes all the way back and say, this is why Brazil now. We had issues in every single part of the world. So we've prepared the Hebrews with the one God to develop and seek the gospel, and this is and there was a plan. Things were supposed to happen, and because the plan needed some modifications, they decided to bring spirits from all parts of the world and incarnate in an organized plan over Brazil. So that will be now the new place for this plan to work. And this is how it all started. And Emmanuel continues. Brazil will have its immortal expression in the spiritual life. When this book was written, 1938, Spiritism in Brazil was in the very, very early beginning. Right? There were here and there a few groups starting to get formed in a more consistent and organized way. But it was pretty much the early beginning of this movement, which is actually headed by the physical author of this book, Chico Xavier. Although he had no intention of being this leader, of course he was a leader in the moral concept of things and based on his work, but it was the very beginning, and we didn't know exactly what they were trying to say here. But now, when we look back, we can think, where is Spiritism flourishing faster and more solid in the world? So, we're having a glimpse now of how amazing Emmanuel is, and showing us things that, we're destined to do, this is what's going to happen. And now we can look back and say, I know what you're saying. And we've been doing that a long, long time. And then he continues, in the land of the Southern Cross, which is Brazil, in this bitter hour, where, remember, there was the revolution in 1930 in Brazil. So remember that. So it was not a very nice, there was a lot of tribulation. There was the war being set up in 38, or starting actually in 38, right? So there's so many things happen in the world, and even other books from Chico Xavier will talk about the developments of the world and the spiritual world. So everything was falling apart. How can we make Brazil do all this? Now that's exactly where all the spirits asking at that time, and we still ask that, right? Where we observe the inversion of almost all of our moral values in the center of human works. Let us uphold our principles and duties. And to you, my sons, may God give you strength and bless you during your daily struggles of the material life. So, Emmanuel knows of our limitations and our capabilities. He's bringing us a plan. So Emmanuel already knows. His vision allows him to see way past our horizon. The spirits that map before, including Jesus, they know way more than we can even imagine about what's going to happen or what's happening in the universe. And now comes down to us. So Emmanuel brings all that information and puts down 2 sentences. May God give you strength and bless you during your daily struggles of the material life. That's what we have to do. Work hard. Love. Faith. Charity. If you do that, you're already contributing to everything we're talking about here. Right? That's one of the interesting parts about this. But because this is so difficult to put together, because we're talking about a country that is still plagued with corruption, and we see that now in the news. Right? So what has changed? If you think about Brazil, since the 1980s that's the civil movement for the right to vote, right, in the 1980s. And so many things happen in Brazil that we still have that. We still have poverty. We still have corruption. We still have so many things. But at the same time, we have people with a lot of faith. So it's a very interesting concept, putting those two things together. So Geraldo Lemes Neto in 1980 asked Chico, about this book in particular that we're talking about today, and expressed his concerns about the name of the book, as pretty much all of us had to. Why Brazil? Really? Right. We all think about this. Even if you don't want to say it, that's fine. We think about this. And you know, and this is published in Folha Espírita in 2011. And we're going to spend some time here. So this is what Chico's going to answer. Chico, being Chico. Geraldinho, it's like the way he would call Geraldinho is that. You're requesting privileges to the land of the gospel when the founder of the gospel, which is the Lord Jesus Christ, lived in poverty, surrounded by sick and needy of every kind, experienced all sorts of vicissitudes and persecution, to be tortured, almost abandoned by his closest friends, and died by crucifixion between two thieves. Why are you complaining? So you're telling me that there's poverty in Brazil? Fine. Look at the big boss there, what he's been through. Why poverty is there? Do we need poverty? Do we need it? No. Do we need violence? No. Do we need war? But we make them happen, right? Okay. Now we have all that. So what's the spirituality will do? They will make that in something positive to us. They will make us learn from it. So there are needy people because people need to help them. So we will flourish the charity in the hearts of people. And that's why Spiritism Brazil started with this interesting concept of not only bringing the spiritual world close to us, but also delivering with charity in a physical way, like delivering food and, you know, in hospitals and need, because there were needy people there. And that's exactly what Chico Xavier is telling us. It's not for us to say Brazil has issues. It's the other way around. It's like, now you guys have faith in God and you have a big job to do. So instead of being like, seriously, like, go to work. Because the guys you were following, when he incarnated, did he need all that? We're talking about the purest spirit that ever got close to us. And he's been crucified. He never complained. So Brazil has issues. And those issues is actually part of the moral evolution of that society. They need to be fixed. So the land of gospel can flourish in its full force. And he continues. Let us not forget that the founder of the gospel went through all sorts of trials, suffered at the cross, but then he dropped the cross and rose again for immortal life. This should serve as a roadmap for the land of the gospel. One day, we shall rise again from the ashes of our sacrifice to demonstrate to the world the glorious immortality, he said. So where is Spiritism now sitting on this? Why is Spiritism growing in Brazil? Why is Chico Xavier incarnated in Brazil? So those are questions that actually not a lot of us think too hard. Like you say, this happened. No, there's a plan for that. Nothing happens by chance. Chico Xavier incarnated in Brazil because the whole society was being prepared for that moment. So he had support. So he could face the challenges of a daily life with a lot of struggles around him. So he could transform his words into action. And he was not going to be ridiculed by a society that did not believe that helping others is part of the game. There are societies out there that you have to be strong. You have to win no matter what. And if this movement was starting in that society, the resistance to it was going to be much harder. Just think about this. There are societies that the reasoning of science weighs significantly more than the reason of faith. So if that movement was starting in one of those societies, that was going to be much harder for it. There are societies that the type of trials involved here are very different. So the trials are more related to the moral aspects rather than the physical aspect of things. So unfortunately, we are still in a stage that we can understand when someone gives a soup to another person, but we cannot understand when I close my eyes and pray for someone. Not everyone thinks that's been helping anyone. They'll tell me you're not doing anything. Oh, you're praying? Come on, just go pray. Do something. Right? not all the time we can do something, and we have to understand this. Do something as we believe we're doing, like going out there and like doing something physically. Very often, if we don't spread revenge, we're doing a lot. What's been happening Friday, and been happening for a long time on the planet, is nourished by this collective thought we have of revenge. Because that's what those spirits are trying to do. Remember, those spirits incarnated during the Crusades. Now they're back. What do they have in mind? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about the fact that the spirits that are killing themselves today, those are the ones that need our prayers? Don't take me wrong on this. All of us need it.
Louder.
Oh, you want to speak louder?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
And mainly this the last sentence we couldn't hear it.
Okay, sure. So, the spirits that are killing themselves for this terrorist acts in the long term, by far, those are the ones that need more help. And don't take me wrong. I'll say don't take me wrong on this. Everyone needs prayer, including the terrorists. Okay, is this shocking? Yes, because we're thinking about revenge. We're thinking about injustice. That's what we're thinking. But we have no idea what justice is. Because we only think about justice as killing someone that kills another person. That's our concept of justice. Now, when you have spirits that have been killed in the worst imaginable ways because they were not Christians before. Remember the Crusades. And now they have the last chance of coming back. And maybe, after many hundreds of years living in the spiritual world, trying to make them better themselves, they have their last trial. Because we're in the last hours. We're going to talk about this. And they have a chance to do it differently. But unfortunately, they're failing their mission, their own mission. But all we can see is the suffering they cause. But we can't see that when these people disincarnate, can we imagine when they realize that everything they've done, can you get close to that? There's no lack of justice by God. For the people who were killed and the families that were left behind. You know, there's always reasons for everything to happen. And they will be helped. I can guarantee you that. So we're going to talk about this in a minute. Let me just finish this thought first because I don't want to get it more confused. But, you know, we go to the Spirit's book now. So what's happened to the world? That's exactly what I'm going to bring now to the last minutes of our conversation today. This world is coming from the circus, for example. We have the institutionalized killing of people in a 60,000 seat arena by animals. Right? That's what we used to do. I participated in those, I know. I have images, florid memories in my head of what I've done. And now we have the Islamic State. It's not a lot of change out there. What we have to understand is that the world changed. The acts of violence, they've never changed. They're still the same. But now we can actually see those acts of violence, not with applause. We don't do that anymore. But we feel shocked, disgusted. So that's called evolution. That's what God is doing. That's what that's what Emmanuel is telling us. That's what everyone's been telling us. The world is evolving. But we think it's getting worse. Because now we're shocked by it instead of sharing it. We don't share violence within ourselves anymore, most of us. So in the question 785 in the Spirits book, Allan Kardec asked the spirits, man's perversity is very great. No doubt about it. Does he not seem to be going back instead of advancing, at least as regards morality? And that's the question we're doing today. Look at any news channel in the world. That's exactly the question we're asking today. You are mistaken. Look at the human race as a whole, and you'll see that is advancing, for it has arrived at a clear perception of what is evil. And that's why things changed. We can certainly look at those things and say, that is evil. Instead of saying, oh, that's cool. Because that's what we used to do not too long ago. Right? And every day witnesses the reform of some abuse. The excess of evil is required to show you the necessity of good and of reforms. Why are this allowed to happen? We don't need that, but it is allowed to happen. So we're doing it, and it is allowed to happen. Because when this happens, it generates this counteroffensive of love and charity back. Everyone in the universe is now connected with a similar idea, is that let's pray for these people. That's huge. That actually rarely happened before the 1900s or so. Rarely. First of all, we're not that connected, so we didn't know what was happening. Second of all, most people wouldn't care. And third of all, a lot of these concepts of spirituality and life, being immortal spirits, unless you started from like a Hindu faith, where by definition would believe in some form of reincarnation, you wouldn't really tolerate that. So the world is evolving. So that's exactly what the spirits are telling us. And you can now see that. So Manuel Filomeno, also in the book Planetary Transition by Divaldo, tell us exactly the same thing. We are in a stage now where a lot of spirit, so we're coming into the era of transition into regeneration world. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that the world's going to end like a asteroid's going to hit the universe and everyone's going to explode. There's no, because unfortunately a lot of us, even in Spiritism, will think about that. Oh, this is like the Mayan evil apocalyptic vision of the world. No, we know that there's a plan out there. We know that we're immortal. So by definition, none of them is really like, we shouldn't be concerned about the end of the world. Is Earth is going to end one day as a planet? Yes, that's a part of evolution. Every planet will go through cycles, and every planet will go through cataclysms, and we'll still live here maybe in a different form of incarnatory way. Every planet is inhabited. It's just that we can't see it, because it's a different form, shape of body. They don't even have the same material body as we have, but those are irrelevant in the long term. But we're coming into this transition where a lot of spirits are coming for the last hour. What that means is that they're having this ginormous chance of coming here and consolidating the moral evolution that they need to stay here in the planet of regeneration. But unfortunately, what we see at the same time, because there's so many of them incarnating, and there are so many elevated spirits incarnating at the same time, so we have almost like a bipolar effect on the planet. There's a lot of evolved people coming in, and there's a lot of less evolved spirits coming in. They're doing a lot of things that shock us as a society, and it's time for us to really understand that's the time of transition. That's what exactly we're going through. And that's what Manuel Filomeno said in the book. Not only that, in pretty much every single book, not only for André Luiz, Manuel Filomeno, even in the Spirits book, the message is exactly the same. Genesis. You can take Genesis, Allan Kardec, and read about the end of times, where he talks about this too. The concepts of heaven and hell and all that. In Heaven and Hell, the other book, you can read about it too. So this is like a uniform message out there that we have to understand. What we have to do, and I had a chance of writing an article on, it's in the Spiritist magazine that I talk about this. If you guys have a chance to read it, that's interesting too. We should stop thinking about capital punishment, about revenge, about, all of a sudden releasing back to people exactly what they're inputting into us. We have to stop that cycle. That's what we have to do. And have to start praying for people. We have to start understanding that this spirit, they are in trouble. They're in much trouble than we are. Everyone involved, of course. And then, there's another interesting thing Geraldo Lemos Neto asked Chico, and he explained well. And a lot of people are talking about this, and that's why I wanted to bring that, the 2019 prophecy by Chico Xavier, which is completely misunderstood out there. But so in 1938, so again, a new meeting occurred by enlightened spirits. Again, remember we talked about this, to discuss the steps of the planetary transition. That was the third meeting that Jesus took part of, and close to the surface of Earth. So Chico explains that the meeting had occurred, and he has already participated. So this is 1980 now. So Chico said, the meeting we talked about in 1938, it has occurred already, and I was there with Emmanuel. The meeting occurred in 1969, around the same time, and this is all based on Geraldo Lemos Neto personal conversations with Chico. It happened on July 20th, 1969, and it was decided that the earth would, and Jesus, again, instead of telling us what we should really listen to, is like, he was very, understanding, and his heart full of love. He said, I'll give you a 50-year moratorium on your action and reaction plan. So basically, whatever you can use the word karmic, which is not really a best word to describe this, but whatever you've done before and you're supposed to happen in your reincarnatory plans for the planet Earth will help you, give you like a 50-year break there so you guys can rework yourselves. And the only thing I ask for you is that do not destroy the planet. That's exactly what he said. Because he said, what Chico says, like, I don't want to see nuclear bombing that will destroy the physical life on Earth. And we were very close to that happening, as you guys understand. When Cuba and the missile crisis and the Cold War, we had multiple episodes where we were like a press of, like a little click on the button away from that to happen. And what Jesus said, you guys have 50 years, behave. We're now coming to the end of that cycle, 50 years, which is going to be 2019. Is the world going to end by 2000? No, it has nothing to do with that. But we were given a very good shot of like putting our things together and bringing, and he explains, bringing the planets together, bringing people together, and collectively living in a state of peace as much as we can. Fighting is always going to be around because we're still in that stage of fighting, unfortunately. That's how we solve our problems, right? We punch each other still. We don't really talk too much. It was decided then that what was going to happen, and so again, like a karmic or the action and reaction law, basically, from a previous Earth. And sorry for the confusion here, so I have to re-edit the slides at the last minute. So the pure spirits have focused then on finishing the transformation into the world of regeneration during those 50 years. That's what they're working very hard to do. And what are we doing very hard? And that's what we have to really focus on in this time of turbulence and, when we see terrorism out there. Do we have to defend life? Yes, we do. And Chico and Allan Kardec and the spirits are very clear about this, Is that okay if I want to save the life of someone, if I interrupt or I act or I do something to stop someone from killing another person? Yes, we have to do this. This is our moral duty in the world we live in. So somehow, here's the difficult job. We have to keep our laws in place and the freedom that we call it so many times. We don't understand freedom, but that's another lecture. We have to do all that, and without propagating the hate, the revenge that we used to propagate in the world in the previous era. That's very difficult. So we have to stop terrorism without propagating it. Can you imagine how difficult that is? Seriously, think about this. Because we have to stop something that's being fueled by our own thoughts of revenge, of like killing back or like acting back or doing something very radical about it. So there's a fine balance that we have to figure out, and that's what Jesus told us to do in 50 years. So we have about 3 years and 2 months to figure that out. If not, what's going to happen is that we're going to delay our evolution into regeneration world for many hundreds of years. And of course, a lot of the action and reaction plans that were planned for the reincarnations on Earth will kick back in. In other words, we're gonna go through some very tough times. That's all we know, right? So if you hear about the 2019 thing, so you know what it is. Right? And we're gonna finish now. So most developed and responsible nations, and this is Chico, should learn to help one another, respecting differences. This was written many, many years ago. Listen. Learn to help and refraining to launch a nuclear war of extermination. That's what was said in the meeting in 1969. The face of the earth should avoid at all costs a World War III. Oh boy, how close we are to that sometimes.
Very close.
Think about this. We have 3.5 years. If we're able to learn how to live together, this is the most difficult thing one can do. Right? Isn't that right, Claire? Try sharing an apartment with 20 people, and you're going to see how difficult that is. Don't start a third world war. We would be completed that transition to regeneration. Yeah. Oh no. We're going to work on that. And just to finalize, Geraldine, if humanity decides to follow the unfortunate path of the World War III, a nuclear war of unpredictable and disastrous consequences, then Mother Earth, under the auspices of the Great Life, will react with unexpected violence. Earth is evolving too, by the way. And the cataclysms that we're seeing happening more and more often is part of this action and reaction. That's a law, right? The man will begin the war, but the forces of nature will end it. And this is where the cataclysmic type of prophetic word comes in. It's like, wow. Yeah, but we know that, right? Earth itself will be tired of human excesses. Oh boy, I bet you. And then we would be faced with massive earthquakes, tsunamis. Did we have a tsunami really? See, this is the thing about reading Chico Xavier talking, 30, 40 years ago, and everything is perfectly exactly what's happening now. And that was just unbelievable. We would see the reactivation of extinct volcanoes. Exactly. We would face devastating thaws. So we would flood the globe with tragic results of coastal areas. That's happening. We're okay, right? Because we're in Toronto, we're close to the water, right? Okay. And in this case, the volcanic ash associated with harmful nuclear activation will eventually become totally uninhabitable throughout the northern hemisphere of the globe. Where are we again? All right, guys. So I'm over time already, but am I? Okay. No, I have 4 minutes. I'm good.
Good.
I'm glad Marcy's not here because he's gonna be. So I have one more. So either if we fail or not, and this is Chico Xavier ending now, Brazil will complete its mission. And then I was like, what? If we fail or not. Okay, so if we succeed, Brazil will grow and be the leader in many aspects of society, including religion, particularly Spiritism. And it is moving towards that direction. I think we're actually making some progress there. But if we fail, it will just take longer, but we'll get there. And this is the good thing about, when we read the Gospels and we understand what God is, and, as being perfect, the law of justice, remember all this, right? We know that we will be perfect. Yes. I know, that's a relief, right? You take some... But at the same time, then the other thought comes like, oh boy, how far I am from that. What should I do? And I think that's what he's bringing us to us all the time, is that what should we do now? Like, we can't wait, I'll be perfect, don't worry, I'll just sit on my couch and, But then I'm not coming back to earth anymore, because remember, we're going to do regeneration, and if you don't work hard, you're going to go somewhere else, help other people, because God is perfect. You're going to go to another planet. Just like Capella came to help us, we'll help other people. And that's part of the evolution, okay? So, I think altogether, I didn't really talk too much about the book, Brazil, Words, Heart, and Land of the Gospel. But I think it's a phenomenal reading. I would recommend everyone reading it, because it talks, for example, about some of the interesting historical facts in Brazil. For example, the Inconfidência Mineira, which is the movement that happened in Minas Gerais for more freedom, for more justice on the relationship between the state or the Portugal at that time, and whatever you have to pay for taxes and the freedom, liberty, the liberties of the people. So it was headed by Tiradentes, and he was killed in the most absurd way. But then we start to understand that he was an Inquisition, Tiradentes, before. He was part of the Inquisition, and he did the exact same thing with so many others. He burned them, took them into pieces, and hanged them in lampposts, and that's exactly what they've done with him. He wanted that job. Look at this guy. He was out there in the spiritual world. Remember when I talked about when you go back, you look at what you've done, it's like, oh, God, right? And that's what's happening to a lot of this spirits incarnated now. They are receiving the call from all over the world, and they're tempted to join the movement of terror. Mm-hmm. Because that seed is still part of them. Because they're brought in here with this feeling when they were incarnated many years ago, and they were killed because of faith. It's in here. They've worked very hard to contain it, but they received the call. The call is there. It's up to them to decide yes or no. See how the transition of times occur.
And this is so interesting, Marco, because today you see young teenagers from all over the world, that they are raised from Canada.
Exactly.
They were born here, they were raised here. Canada is a very peaceful country.
Yeah.
But their parents don't know how could they, receive that message and go and join the ISIS. So it's happening all over.
It's happening, and Tiradentes is a good example, because he could have brought the seed of, no, I'll go back there and I'll do it again. He had when he was called to lead that movement, he had a choice of making that movement a slug war and killed a lot of people, or he could have steered toward, we want freedom and I want to stand for freedom. He decided to go to stand for freedom. He was killed, but he decided to do that. He knew he was going to be killed that specific way, right? And everything is described very well in the book, and we have so many other examples that I think you guys should read. I'm not going to instill the thunder of the book in the end, but it is very, very, very interesting. And in what we're going through now, I think it's very similar, as Sandra said. Spiritism can explain that really well. Why people up here, brought in an amazing condition, that are being taught. And this is our responsibility as a parent too. Teaching, charity, love, respect. But that seed is still there in many cases. We have to work very hard to contain it. But in the end, it is a personal decision. We cannot change free will. We have to work very hard to do it. But in the end, free will take place, and we'll make the decision between you're going to be a regenerated man or you're in trouble again. And what can we do to stop that? Is to show to people how love can change. Because love is the only change that can really happen. We can even go to war, but if love does not prevail, no change ever will happen in the universe. And I think I'll just end with that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, everyone. So now we are open for questions. We have around 5 to 10 minutes. Does anyone have a question?
Actually, it's not a question, it's more like a comment. You were talking about when Chico Xavier was saying the 1980, right?
Yeah.
He was responding Geraldino.
Yeah.
He talked about the World War III. It's very interesting because not only in the social media, but in some news, they are calling for World War III. So, you know, it's our responsibility really to cut this energy from the world, and instead of being, you know, when you see this, instead of getting too much hurt in your soul, because we do feel, that's our nature, but do this with a prayer towards anybody. If your heart claims to go with Paris, go with Paris. If your heart goes to go with Brazil, what's happening in Minas Gerais.
Exactly, yeah.
If your heart goes with Lebanon, it doesn't matter. If it goes towards the planet Earth, you know, just go and pray, because right now I think that's what the world needs the most, is prayer and spreading that energy of loving and really through your good energies.
Danielle?
Yes, I have one question and sort of one comment that I would like you to share your impressions. So first being, the way you put in a very clear manner, which I agree, which is that love is what brings transformation.
Yeah.
So religion, either Spiritism or others, in my own conception, it's a way that we can achieve that, right? Because you're not prepared to have that ingrained and automatically performed. So we use religion as, or a doctrine, whatever, as a rule, because we still need that. But when we see all these things happening for most of people in North America, is that I see that are not religious and have something, it starts to generate for them a bad image of religion, because they misassociate the image that all these things happen because of religion. So my question to you, that I ask to myself is, as being someone who has beliefs, as being someone who's a spiritist, how to actually be able to spread and influence others without using the religion that can generate a sort of a reaction from people that would be, oh no, religion is not good. So that's one thing.
Yep.
And just one other thing going a different way, because you made me think while you were talking, it's about the whole planet, the whole consequence that we have. I do think that we are privileged to be in a place where we are surrounded by material richness, and it's very important for us to keep our role in small things that we might not even understand sometimes, such as you know, pollution. How do we deal with our small things when we act in different manners? Because it's some small things that we can actually do and has an influence in overall who do we support and how do we put our society in front of our needs.
Exactly. Okay, so for the first one, then I think it's a great question, and it all starts with the original concept of religion, because the original concepts of religion were marked in a way that, like, I'm this particular religion, and by definition, I don't think you're correct, because I believe in this, you believe in that. So it started creating separation instead of bringing people together. Spiritism brings the opposite message, is that I believe that we're brothers and should love one another. Now, I believe in reincarnation and all those things, but hey, what? It doesn't matter, because we're all really sharing a same principle, which is the moral principle, which is universal even if people that do not believe in God. So, even for anyone in the world, if we follow along the tracks of moral concepts, to say, it's not okay to hate. That is not religious. That is a concept that expands beyond any concept of religion that you can possibly imagine. Because it's a concept that we know that comes from God, because God is perfect. But even if you don't mention that, and you just say that, by definition, we're sharing this planet, and we should help one another, no matter what. I don't care. If it's a religion, or if you don't believe or you believe. If we start with this basic principle that we should care and love one another, then we're done. And that's exactly what Jesus brought to us. Remember, Jesus didn't want to start, this is my religion. He never, ever didn't even mention that, because he was bringing up concepts that we follow, and then we call ourselves Christians, right? But these concepts are universal. They are even beyond Christ. They are from God, right? So that's why if we follow those principles instead of the religion that we call, because that's a very complicated term to describe to other people, then we're safe, we're fine. Now, for the second part of it, I think it is our responsibility, if I get correct your comment, of caring about the world, because a lot of things we do to the world are fueling also conflicts. And one example, there are studies out there showing that what's happening today in the Middle East has also to do with environmental changes that are happening in the world. For example, lack of water. So lack of water, by definition, will complicate your trial. So you already have a difficult trial, which is like coming back here and not thinking about revenge against the guy that killed you like 4 incarnations ago, right? That's your big trial. Now you're there and you don't have any material needs and you don't have water. That now it's explosive, because now I say, hey, I'm going to kill anyone for water. So you are see how you're actually making it harder, right, for your trial. So how can we do that? That's very complicated, and I think we can probably have another hour of discussion, how we in religions, or we with our faith and understanding of the laws of God, can actually change the world on that aspect too. And I think it is our moral duty to do that, for sure. Right, so. And
we also have a comment online, right?
Maybe one last question here. It's a comment from Rafael, and he's watching us online. He said, bringing us back to the topic on Brazil, world's heart, land of the gospel, right? He is grateful for being born in Brazil, because it gave him a chance to get to know the Spiritism. Yeah. And then when he came to Canada seeking for a better life, he says that he found it, and he doesn't see himself going back to Brazil by choice. So he's asking, am I wrong in the way I'm thinking?
It's an excellent
considering
question.
The role of the Brazil, and this resonates with many of us sitting here. Right?
Yeah. So if we remember the last line of Emmanuel in the preface, it said, Brazil will provide the spiritual support to the whole planet. That's what we're doing. We were trained there. Same thing for me. So I share with you exactly the same idea. What we have to do, you're trained, not only here, we were trained back there when we were disincarnated. We went to schools, we went to the Ministry of Communication, went to the Ministry of Mediumship. We read messengers to see how many times we fail. And then we come here, and then we have this amazing capability of learning Spiritism, and we're ready to go, and now we're on the roll. It's your job. spread the word with your actions. So that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
It's always lead by example, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just do whatever you believe in. Like, that's what Jesus is telling us for so many times. Like, just, you believe in charity and love, just love. Why is that so complicated, right? And that's, I think, taking out Spiritism in your back pocket, like put it in your briefcase and bring it over, just apply it, right? And we're not talking about going out there only and distributing soups. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about moral transformation, which is much harder to do, right? So, if that answers the question.
This is also talking about Rafael's question.
Yeah.
This is so important, because there is no coincidence that we are all met here and we are all doing what we are doing, and this is something that we were trained there, we got the seed, and we came here to help spread it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, everyone online. Really appreciate you guys joining us. Have a blessed week. Okay, so let's now